Well, greetings and salutations, and welcome once again to the Newsman Weekly Podcast. Lucky episode number 47. I don't know exactly what's lucky about number 47, but we've reached it, so that's lucky for us. Thanks again to all of you for joining us today. We know you have about a bazillion choices in this media crazy world, and we're just glad you choose to spend time with us each and every week. My thanks also to the great folks at Relax It's Just Coffee for sponsoring this show. Every day just starts better with great coffee, and our friend Paul Kimmerling and his baristas at Relax simply have the best in town. So get over there today and get a cup. While you're there, get a fresh pastry from Blackbird Bakery located right inside the shop. There is no better way to start your day. Tell them the old newsman from Richland Source sent you. Hey, I'm joined again today by Richland Source North County reporter Hayden Gray, who's filling in for Zach Heiser as the executive producer of the Newsman Weekly. Good morning, Hayden. How was your weekend? And will your beloved Pittsburgh Steelers ever sign Aaron Rodgers as your next quarterback?
Oh, thanks for having me again, Carl. The weekend was okay. I informed you before today's show, the very end of it into early hours of this morning were not the most ideal, but the thought of Aaron Rodgers joining the Steelers almost makes me just as sick as I was this morning. So I don't know. I mean, I think it is what it is. He'll sign, he won't sign, whatever.
And for those who think the old newsman lacks compassion when he's dealing with his coworkers, when Hayden told me he was feeling poorly, I simply told him, well, get a bucket, set it beside your chair. We'll get through this.
Yes.
I'm also joined by Knox County reporter Grant Ritchie, this show's official videographer for at least one more week. Richie, from everything I understand, it was a wild weekend again down in Knox County. Did you get out and participate in the tomfoolery, or was this a pizza-making weekend with Grandma again?
You know, it might be a pizza-making weekend this upcoming weekend, but no, we had a Cinco de Mayo food truck festival in Mount Vernon on Saturday, so went to it was actually yesterday on Sunday. Went to that and yeah, ate some tacos and had a good time. Yeah.
So a Cinco de Mayo festival. That's not on Cinco de Mayo.
All right, man. Listen, would you rather have it on the work
Monday.
week,
Yeah.
Or on the weekend when more people can come?
You know, you're absolutely right. I'm thinking this year, New Year's Day, well, it'll come on December 31st, simply because that's more convenient for Americans, because it'll be on a weekend.
In a way, it does already.
All right. Hey, folks, we have another interesting and informative show for you today. In a few minutes, we'll be joined by Andrea Mauk Akinyemi, a Richland County woman who lost her son to a fatal car accident 2 years ago, just 20 days after he graduated from Lucas High School. His name was Damon Mauk. She's embroiled in a legal battle over public records related to that crash that has now reached the Ohio Supreme Court. So stay tuned for that discussion, but until then, we got some local news to talk about. Folks, we got a big event coming up Wednesday night at St. Peter's High School that I wanted to remind everyone about. Mansfield native Matthew Failer is coming home from Alaska to talk about the recently concluded Iditarod sled dog race across that big state. You're invited to be a part of that conversation. It's called Beyond the Trail, a conversation with Matthew Failer. It's going to be in the St. Peter's High School auditorium on Wednesday night. Failer's making the journey back to his hometown to share his incredible journey and experiences in the 14 times he's raced in the Iditarod, an event that's been dubbed the last great race on Earth. The event will begin with a conversation between myself and Failer, who lives in Willow, Alaska, with his wife Liz and son Theo. Part of that chat will give Failer, who earned a degree in fine arts photography from the Ohio State University, now they can't sue me, the opportunity to show videos and photos of his efforts in the Iditarod and also from his Alaskan Husky Adventures business. After Matt and I talk, we'll have a question and answer session that will allow those in attendance to post their own queries. We did a similar event last year at the Richland Source, a wildly popular event that sold out in less than 10 hours with our limited seating capacity. This year's event will be inside the spacious St. Peter's High School Auditorium, Robert Fry Gymnasium, at 104 West 1st Street in downtown Mansfield. We thank our friends at St. Peter's School for allowing us to use this great space. Tickets are $20, same as last year. Half of the proceeds will go to the local Boy Scouts program to benefit an organization that helped Failer obtain his Eagle Scout status while he was growing up here in Mansfield. We'll put a link in the show notes to the Eventbrite site where you can buy your tickets to what I'm certain is going to be an amazing night. You can also buy tickets at the door. Doors open at 6:30. We'll start the evening at 7. So please join us Wednesday for what will be an informative and inspirational night. And I know, Hayden, if you're not leaning over a bucket, you'll be there.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some big roles to play for some things that will provide ways for people to maybe, if they aren't able to make it, they'll be able to check out exactly how it went. But we'll keep that under wraps for now.
Very good. Ground was officially broken Monday afternoon on a new $38 million assisted living development facility for seniors along Klein Avenue in Mansfield. The site's 120 apartments will be a mixture of one-bedroom and studio apartments under the name Silver Birch of Mansfield. And I'm probably about to butcher this last name, but David Kokogny, CEO of Chicago-based Vermilion Development, said the apartments will be affordable for all senior citizens. After the ceremonial groundbreaking for the 3-story multifamily community, he said every senior can afford to live at Silver Birch because every senior is eligible for Social Security. He said the majority of residents who will live there will have their respective assisted living services paid for by Medicaid. It's Vermilion's first project in partnership with the Ohio Housing Finance Agency. It was a ceremony that included State Senator Mark Romanchuk, Mansfield Mayor Jody Perry, and Barbara Richards, Director of Multifamily Housing at the OHFA. He said, quote, "In our case, as in the case of all 9 Silver Birch communities in Indiana, 2 in Arizona and 1 in Illinois, Medicaid will pay for services, and then every resident pays for his or her own room and board." He said room and board is capped, and it's capped by 2 things. 1, a state Medicaid agency says you may charge no more than a person's Social Security income, less a personal needs allowance. He said because they're using low-income housing tax credits, there's a separate cap associated with those, and they have to adhere to the lesser of the 2 caps. Quote, "So when I said this is affordable to everyone, I genuinely meant it." He said it's the first such project in Ohio to be financed under new, quote, affordable assisted living guidelines. So, Richie, in about 50 years from now, you can move into the Silver Birch of Mansfield.
All right, yeah.
Assuming I let you live through this whole show today.
I'll have my 401k go directly toward that,
Yeah.
so maybe I can start making payments.
Well, my 401k is down to a 201k.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
I'm pretty sure I'm going to be living.
Sorry, I brought that up.
I'm going to be living in a van down by the river. The way it goes. Hey, the leader of the Mansfield chapter of the NAACP said Monday evening he's going to try to have the city's Civilian Police Review Commission revamped and strengthened. Alomar Davenport, who was elected president of the local civic rights rights organization in December, said during a town hall meeting that the board, quote, in its current form has no teeth. He said he would ask the local NAACP to spearhead the effort, a citizen initiative petition that would, goodness gracious, that would require a sufficient number of signatures on the ballot. I really should read this once. He didn't elaborate during Monday's meeting on what changes he would seek. He tried this 3 years ago, and when he was still on city council, in a push that never made it to the ballot. But one of the biggest changes in that one would have been the creation of an inspector general position on the city payroll outside of the police department that would investigate complaints against officers at the same time the department is investigating them internally. I don't know if he's got plans to try to bring that back into this. Davenport made his plans known about 2 hours into the public meeting that the NAACP organized a town hall at the Legacy Academy of Excellence on Trimble Road. It was a session that included 19 questions posed to police leaders by the organizers, and then also a question and answer session with those in attendance. All right, that's enough for now. Let's take a quick break. I want to leave time for the conversation you're about to hear. When we come back, we'll be joined by Andrea Mauk Akinyemi, so stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Newsman Weekly. We're now joined by Andrea Mauk Akinyemi. Good morning, Andrea. Thanks for taking time to be with us today.
Good morning, Carl.
Okay, 20 days after graduating from Lucas High School and also the Pioneer Career and Technology Center in 2023, 18-year-old Damon Mauk lost his life in a one-car accident on Mansfield-Lucas Road in Monroe Township. The Mansfield Post of the Ohio State Highway Patrol said he was alone in the car when he went off the right side of the road, hit a sign and a tree, ending a very promising life far too soon. Now, Andrew, I think you were out of the country at the time with your husband, Edward. I can't even imagine that. But how did you learn about the crash, and when did you learn that Damon had actually passed away in the accident?
So my husband and I and a group of friends were in Costa Rica at the time. One of my close friends, Tara Stone, she is a disabled veteran, and she was looking to buy property down there to make a retreat to help veterans who were disabled, and we were all interested in being part of that project. Me and my husband, Edward, were in a reserve, like a forest reserve, so we didn't have access to the internet. As soon as we got out and we were able to get reception, I got a phone call from a woman named Katie Scarlett, who actually stopped on the side of the road, a wonderful human, to give aid. And she contacted me and said, Damon was in an accident, it was bad. At that point, we didn't know anything until we got back to the house. We had to drive about 30 minutes to get to where we were staying. And when we got there, my best friend actually was the one who had to tell me that he passed away.
That had to be, without a doubt, the longest 30 minutes that I can't even imagine. But I mean, I took photos for Richland Source at the Lucas High School graduation that year, and I specifically remember Damon coming across the stage. I think I had seen him wrestle a couple of times when he was in school, and such a large individual. And when I say large, I'm not talking about just physically, because he was a big guy. But you could tell when he came across the stage, I think he danced a little bit. I said, this is just a guy that's full of life. He already had a full-time job, I think, with Adina. He had plans to get his real estate license. Andrea, I raised 3 sons, and I cannot imagine the pain of losing one that way. The last couple of years, how have you dealt with your grief since then?
Well, it's an insurmountable loss, and it's difficult to put into words. In the beginning, I used to write and share a lot because I thought if I could put it or verbalize it, that people would understand. And that's just simply not true. I think people can empathize, but until you've been in that situation, you have no understanding. Sometimes it's still hard for me to conceptualize that he's gone and he's not ever coming back. I think with grief, it's something that our society, we avoid. We don't talk about. It's uncomfortable. There's not really a playbook or anything that you learn in school on what to do when your child dies. It's just not something that most people think of. I think for me, the biggest thing was that I had to learn how to be compassionate to myself. We live in a society, and myself included, that's very goal-driven. You have to be the best, set a personal record, and you can't do that when you're dealing with grief. And sometimes you have to realize you're not in control. And I had to learn how to be gentle with myself and be gentle with the people around me, because most people, they didn't know what to say to me, and I didn't know what to say to them, and that's okay. But just really practicing self-compassion has been the biggest way for me to cope. And going through the motions, you can't bottle it up. You have to face it, and that's what I've been trying to do.
Yeah, I know that you've worked to honor Damon's memory in a lot of ways, including a charitable fund at the Richland County Foundation to benefit students who may have additional needs in the classroom. Tell me about that effort and why that effort is so important to you on behalf of Damon's memory.
So Damon was neurodivergent. He was diagnosed with multiple, ADHD, signs of autism, and that doesn't always fit well in school.
Right.
When you learn differently, your behavior is a little different. Thankfully, he went to Lucas, and he had wonderful teachers, Andrea Webb, Laura Swank, and they were willing to make modifications for him. So Damon had a standing desk. He never really sat on a chair ever. He went from a yoga ball to...
Seeing the videos of him dancing and things like that, I can't imagine Damon ever sitting down for too long.
He never did. He was full of energy. And, you know, he had some sensitivities to light. He could not do like the fluorescent lighting in school. It gave him migraines. And his teachers were always coming up with ways to be able to have, you know, modifications for him just to make his environment more comfortable. And we just really seen the progression of him from when he was in elementary school to, we don't know if he's going to pass this grade, what can we do, to him all the way up to senior year. He had half a credit to graduate, so he worked the majority of time. And after Damon passed away, I had a lot of kids reach out to me who were on an IEP, which is called an Individualized Education Program plan. And he was asked if he wanted to be taken off of it in 9th grade, and he said, no, I like that I'm able to have these things. And when he went to Pioneer, there were some kids that reached out to me and said, you know, we were taunted or made fun of because we were in the quote unquote, you know, slow class, and Damon made it cool. He was not afraid to talk about it. He loved his teachers. And we were very blessed to be able to have, you know, the kind of experience that we did. And so what we have at the Richland County Foundation is called the Damon Mauk Memorial Fund. And it's a scholarship for teachers to be able to purchase equipment for their classroom to help kids that learn differently. It can also be used to go on school trips, socialization. It takes a lot of money, especially money is being cut from schools. So
Exactly.
if you want to go on a field trip, you have to be able to pay for the bus. You have to be able to pay for whatever activity you're doing. And we're hoping that those funds can be used to help people, you know, teachers to be able to have those items that they need for kids that learn differently.
So even today, Damon's making IEP cool again.
Yes, he is. He was unapologetically himself and just annoyingly optimistic.
Well, we should all be that optimistic forever. Now, what did he study at Pioneer?
So he went to school for home remodeling, and that's when he started working for the Special Projects Group in Adena, and he was also wanted to be a real estate agent and get his home inspection license so that he could kind of do a little bit, you know, of everything. And
Well, that is cool. For those who want to learn more about that fund and more about Damon Mauk's legacy, please visit damonmauk.org, and Andrea will put a link to that website into the show notes with the story about today's show. One of the things, and I'm certain I saw him wrestle at least once or twice. How enjoyable was that? How long did you know he wanted to be a wrestler? And I did see an incredible video of him when he was little, and somebody must have asked him about being afraid of something, and he said, I don't know how old he was. He could have been more than 4 or 5 years old, maybe 6. And he goes, I'm not afraid of anything. I'm a big boy.
Damon was such a character. He always wanted to do things to better himself, and I think he liked the idea of wrestling. Ed Finley seen him playing football, and he said, hey, we need you on our team. Mm-hmm. And he just really liked to be in the gym. And I think what he liked about wrestling is that while he was on a team, it was really up to him on how he did. When you step on that mat, you don't have anyone else to blame for your your performance. And I think he really liked the idea of that. He was a heavyweight in 9th grade. He had never wrestled before. He had done some Thai kickboxing, but he got beat for years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most really good freshman wrestlers weigh about 100 pounds.
Right.
You know, you grow into a heavyweight. So if you're a heavyweight as a freshman, it's not going to be an easy road.
No, it was not. But we didn't do any of the weight cutting or anything like that. Damon worked out a lot. He had a lot of muscle, and we didn't do any of the calorie restrictions. He was almost always the smallest heavyweight throughout his entire career. But he, he just really enjoyed it. And Damon just really liked to be around people. I always said he should have been a politician, a preacher, or a car salesman because that was just the type of attitude that Damon had. He would talk to everyone, and he just really enjoyed being around his wrestling family.
And he learned over the years because he was pretty damn good by the time he was a senior.
He did. He ended up going to districts, which was a pretty big deal for our small community. So we also have had some great wrestlers in Lucas. And I'm very happy to say that the program that they're doing now, that Tyler's doing, we have, over 20 kids in the Biddy program. And we never had that before in Lucas. So it's really exciting to see.
Well, that's very cool. Now, Andrea, one of the last things you probably figured you would have to do as you're dealing with the grief of the death of your son was fight with the government over public records pertaining to that death and also trying to collect the belongings that he had with him when he died. I read a story where you had said, quote, "He was my child. I wanted to know everything." So why and when kind of did you launch an effort that has now reached the Ohio Supreme Court? And I understand there's things, it's pending litigation. This case is still before the Ohio Supreme Court. There's things you can't say. There's some things that you can't say that I'm going to say by the time we get done.
Right.
But just talk about when you realized, something's not right here. I'm not getting the full story.
Well, because I was not there, I wanted to know everything that happened. So I initially started. What really struck me in the beginning was that when we went to the funeral home, so Damon left the hospital and then he went to Harvest, which is essentially for them to take organs, skin tissue, and then from there he went to the Montgomery County coroner, yes, to have an autopsy report. So when we went to the funeral home, the only thing that was returned to us from the funeral home was the nose ring that was in his nose. So he had no belongings, didn't know where they were. So I started going to the hospital, getting those records. From there, what I had found out was that at the same time that Damon was in an accident, there was another accident that also had a fatality. So typically in those cases, it goes to the state troopers because they're the ones that are most familiar with doing that. And unfortunately, they were at a different scene. So because of that, local law enforcement had to respond to the crash first. So I just started piecing things together, and I wasn't getting a whole lot of information. It came to a point where almost hostile.
Now, why do you think it was? Why would they? And I'm about to ask you a question that there's no way you can answer. So if we were in court, the other attorney would say, "Objection, Your Honor." But what would be the motivation for this to become hostile from a law enforcement perspective?
Part of that I don't know because we never got the information, which is what we're trying to find out. At one point, I had one agency tell me that the Richland County Prosecutor's Office called them and told them not to release the records, which I had never heard of in my entire life. That was the kind of the final straw for me. I went to the prosecutor's office and talked to them. They said there's no way that could have happened. Jody's not even here. She's on vacation. Right. What would possess someone to say something like that? I actually at one point had to go file a police report against the police in order to get information. And it was just too much. I mean, my child had just died, and I just simply wanted to know what happened.
Right.
And it just got to a point that I had a conversation with my husband, and we said, we're going to hire a lawyer. And I talked to several law firms, and they said, Brian's your guy.
That's Brian Bardwell.
And he's been very helpful, ever since then.
Now, one of the things I read, and I'm sure when you talked about getting belongings back, and just want to make sure people understand what we're talking about. The law enforcement agency that responded initially to the crash, because State Patrol was busy with another one, I believe was the Richland County Sheriff's Office. And one of the things that I read, and this was on Court News Ohio, is, and this might be one of the things that you can't talk about, but I'm just going to put it out there. Apparently, Damon had $1,500 in cash and an iPhone, and at the hospital, someone who identified himself as his father, the deputy handed over the iPhone and the money, and there's absolutely no record of that happening, because the sheriff's department, I believe, has said, there's no body cams on inside the hospital, so we don't know exactly what happened. But have you ever gotten an explanation about, and I'm sure the money's not a big deal, but that iPhone would have been something as a parent that I would have, and as you are, fight tooth and nail to try to get back, because that's got so many memories and things in it from Damon that I'm sure that's something you would like to get back. And I mean, my understanding, and you can correct me on this part of it as well, Damon's father wasn't necessarily a big part of his life, and it seems very unlikely that he would have been at the hospital after the accident. So what do you know about that part of it? Or what can you tell us?
Well, some of the things I can't speak on. We actually were able to get the phone back. So that was that was one thing that we were able to get back.
How did you get that back?
So one of my friends contacted Damon's father.
Okay.
And was able to get.
So Damon's father was the one at the hospital that night or that day?
Yes.
Okay.
However, we don't know how that happened because in his entire medical records, because I was never contacted by any agency at all.
You were contacted by your friend?
Correct. Not even after we got back. Not the coroner. Not anyone contacted us. So this was all new information to us when we were at the funeral home. We are not sure how he got there. We have some theories.
Mm-hmm.
We believe part of it was the organ procurement organization, even though he was not listed. He was not an organ donor. We found that out later. And they have access to that information because in the state of Ohio, only one parent, if you're over the age of 18, only one parent has to give consent for organ donation and harvest. And we believe that may have been the reason that he was contacted. I'm sure most people have heard of qualified immunity with the police.
Yes.
And, that's in there for a reason. But part of that qualified immunity is looking at what would someone do who had not been trained, a normal, reasonable person. And when you look at certain situations, like if you walked outside and you found a wallet and it was in your driveway, what's the first thing you would do? You would probably open it up.
Yes.
Right? Now, what your intentions were with it after the fact would
Yes.
probably change.
Hopefully,
on the
most of us.
person.
Hopefully, most of us would open it up to see who it might belong to.
Yeah, sure.
Some people might open it up to see just what's in it.
Right, which would be a reasonable, thing that you would expect someone to do. And the thing is, I worked in corrections. I worked in a high stress environment, and I have empathy for people who do that. I can't imagine going to a scene where a young 18-year-old child has passed away. I'm sure that is not something anyone wants to see or deal with, regardless if it's your job. But if there are mistakes that are made, I would much rather you just admit to those mistakes instead of this being, this is hurtful to continue to be reminded of this when at the end of the day I really just want to grieve.
Right.
and just be entitled to the information that is public.
I mean, your requests seemed like they should have been pretty easily filled. You simply asked for records that included the Richland County Sheriff's Office report, the State Patrol report, inventory of items that were taken from the car after the crash, body-worn camera footage from the patrol and the Sheriff's Office, as well as the accident report, photos, and videos that law enforcement created from the scene. When you didn't get all those things as you expected, you did hire an attorney, Brian Bardwell, to help in the effort, and that's not an inexpensive endeavor. I worked at a newspaper in Fostoria back in the 80s, and we fought over public meetings and public records with the local hospital association that included 2 trips to the Ohio Supreme Court before we finally won by a 4-3 vote at the time. Now, for those who don't know, Bardwell is a former journalist who founded a law firm called Speech Law, which is dedicated to protect citizens' rights to ask questions of the government. And I saw this quote from Brian, which I thought was excellent. He said, "When your child dies while you're out of the country in a horrible car crash, you should be able to come home and get answers about what happened without being forced to drag the fire department, the sheriff's department, and the highway patrol into court to tell you what happened to your son and where all his valuables have gone." So it sounds like Brian Bardwell has been somebody that's been willing to lead this fight for you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember about your first meeting with Brian, and what did he say about your chances?
Well, Brian is definitely an advocate for public records and believes that there should be some transparency in government, and I would have to say that I agree with that too. Every county is different, and that's part of the reason why we are in the Supreme Court right now. It's been difficult, and I don't want to speak for Brian, but he's made some comments like, just never seen anything like this.
Yeah. Well, last month you did gain a victory in the Supreme Court. I think it was on early April. The Supreme Court ordered the Richland County Sheriff's Office to produce 3 sets of records about missing money and property that were taken after your son's death. The Supreme Court will look at this information in camera, which means they'll look at it themselves. It won't be done in public yet, to determine if the sheriff's office improperly withheld information. The court ordered this in-camera inspection of records after the sheriff's department had redacted them before turning them over to you. And I hadn't seen this. It's not often you see the phrase writ of mandamus, and that jumped out to me because we used it several times with our fight back in the 80s. A writ of mandamus is basically the court saying, public official, do thy duty.
Right.
And basically, do what the law says you should do. You've also requested records from the Ohio Department of Public Safety. Some of this stuff you've gotten, but I was stunned when I saw how long it took to get this information. I know that was part of the litigation. And when you ask for body-worn camera video and it takes 6 months before you finally get it, and the Ohio Department of Public Safety, which is the State Patrol, their excuse is, well, we deal with these requests every day and we take them as we get them. But the Supreme Court said, 6 months is a little bit long because the official requirement is within a reasonable period of time.
Which is not defined.
Right.
So that's subjective. What's a reasonable time when you lay awake every night and you don't know what happened to your child?
6 months seems very unreasonable.
I mean, here we are in 2025, and I still don't have all the answers.
I did see that Justice Kennedy, Sharon Kennedy, found there was 4 to 6 months that their delay in producing body camera footage was unreasonable, and she believed that you should get the $1,000 in statutory damages from the department, which would be the max that you're allowed. Now, I know all of this is still pending with the Supreme Court. They've not, I don't know if they've done their in-camera inspection. I don't think they've filed any sort of a ruling or a conclusion from that. But what else can you share with us about this effort? And I guess not, losing your child and having to fight for records when you really should just be allowed to be grieving and remembering and enjoying the memory of your son. I can't even imagine what that's been like for you.
It hasn't been easy. I will say that out of everyone that we dealt with, we met with the local state troopers, Trooper Hoffer and Supervisor Carr. They actually took the time to meet with us personally and go over the crash report, and that was really helpful. And they had, just expressed empathy because they had children and they understood
Right.
what that could be like for them. It's really frustrating because I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns, and I don't know if this is because of bureaucracy or systems that are causing this to take a long time, or if it's just malfeasance, if it's, I just don't know. But I would think that anyone in this situation, regardless of who they are, if they're just a citizen that wants to get information from their local sheriff's department or their local EMS or whoever, should be met with cooperation of trying to help that person get this information to be transparent. I know that when I worked in corrections and I had to do a lot of documentation, I was transparent about it because if I was doing my job, great. If I wasn't, take responsibility for it. We all make mistakes, but to not help someone or assist them in getting information, especially when it pertains to the death of their child, it's really hard to wrap my head around.
Yeah, I can't. So the state patrol, at least on the local level, has been cooperative. Have you had it? What's the experience been like with the sheriff's department here in the county in terms of similar meetings or discussions you've had with them?
Just very standoffish. And it's kind of wild because those are people that I used to work with.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just kind of this like authoritarian type response. And I don't want to get
Right. You don't want to.
too much into it. It's really hard for me. I try to look at things from multiple angles. What would be the reason? And I realize we live in like a Sioux happy.
We are a very litigious society.
Correct. And that really was never, with this case, it's not about money. It's not like this is a civil case where if I win, I'm going to, get all this extra money. Regardless of what happens, I'm probably going to have to pay a bunch of money. It really made me aware of how to find information and how hard it is to find information. If you want to look up laws, being able to go on the Federal Register to look at what is the federal law and how does it connect with ORC code, the Ohio Revised Code, and it's really not a simple process to navigate. No. Trying to find policies of our local law enforcement, something that I would think would be
fairly easy to obtain,
public or easily accessible. So knowing that that's a hard system to navigate, knowing what I went through, I would have hoped to have been, in a more cooperative space. This is the last thing I wanted to do.
Right. And as we said, it's a litigious society, and I'm sure the attorneys that represent the liability, I forget the name of the state organization that does liability for county agencies. I'm sure they've got attorneys advising the sheriff's office, shh.
And how much are we paying for that? Right. I have no doubt that that's funded by taxpayers. And any time that there's a lawsuit that has happened, the lady who wrote the Columbus Dispatch article, she said, we're familiar with Richland County because we've We've done cases about what's been paid out for the lawsuits.
Right.
and you know, there's always going to be mistakes, right? And that's fine. That's part of the job. But some of that probably could just be prevented by a little training, cooperation, some
Right.
talks, and at the end of the day, taxpayers are paying for those lawyers, and they are paying for that litigation. They are paying for those payouts, and we could really work on doing some preventative,
Right.
you know, by training and public relations with the community.
What's the old expression? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. You know, if you just kind of take care of the little things. Now, so what comes next now, Andrea? I even as you continue to deal with the grief of losing Damon, I know life goes on. So what else is going on in your life these days? And we'll keep an eye on the courtroom stuff and maybe do an updated report once some closure is finally made. But what's going on with your life these days?
Well, I try to stay busy. Every year we've been having a car show. Damon loved cars, called Rev Up for Damon, and I was very thankful the Sons of Herman Club let me do that at their lodge last year. That was really fun. We had a Damon Mauk Memorial Wrestling Tournament, the first annual, thanks to Billy Caudill, Steve Flannery, Ed Finley. They all really wanted to memorialize Damon in that way. Recently, I went to a camp with Tara Dodd. I don't know if you remember Lyle Dodd.
Okay, yes.
That her husband passed away. It's coming up on a year. And she took me to a camp called Because I Said I Would. And it's a camp that is for families of going through bereavement. It's fully funded by donors. So you go to this 92 acres and you get to spend the weekend in a cabin, and then they have different workshops you can take, and just really being around other individuals that are going through the same grief that you're going to. It was started by a guy named Alec Sheen. He started this whole movement because I said I would after his father passed away. And when he gave the eulogy, he said, my dad wasn't a doctor. He didn't do anything, society's pinnacle. But
Right.
he said he kept his word, and that meant a lot to him. So he made these cards called Because I Said I Would, and it just really took off. And now he has this nonprofit that he helps other people going through the bereavement process. And they actually, after attending it, they asked if I would come back to do some therapy sessions, to maybe do some collaboration with them. And so that's really exciting, and getting to be around other people that kind of understand.
Right. Yeah, I
what
mean
we're
that
going through.
is that here in Ohio or is that someplace else?
It's in Ohio. And I may butcher this, but it's Walhounding.
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 Yes. That is home. Believe it or not, if you get a chance to go down there, there's an annual lily pad festival
Lily
in Walhounding. Not that I've been there before. I'm just saying. Yeah, actually, I have. So that's a whole nother story we have to get to on a different day. But all right, folks, we're going to wrap up today's show on that note. Andrea, I'd love to have you back once this thing gets settled and we can talk. Then you can tell us everything that your very wise counsel has advised you not to talk about yet.
Please don't listen to this, Brian.
Well, tell Brian to call me, and I will tell him the yeoman work you did in not talking about specific parts of the litigation. But many thanks to Andrea Mauk Akinyemi for joining us today, and best of luck in your continued legal efforts to obtain full justice for Damon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Carl.
And our guest next week will be Alamar Davenport, president of the Mansfield chapter of the NAACP. He will talk about his effort to strengthen and revamp the Police Review Commission here in Mansfield. Thanks again to all of you for listening to the Newsman Weekly. I'll be back in just a second to put a bow on this week's episode, but until then, and maybe this is part of what we talked about today, remember what Mark Twain said: if you tell the truth, You don't have to remember anything.